Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I think we're still finding seats and groups, and if you're in a table alone, we're probably going to scooch you together with another group too, so we can have great conversation tonight. So I want to thank you for being here. I know that we added an extra meeting in, and originally when this conversation got started, the plan was that we were going to have a couple of meetings, then go out to the community, then go to the board. And then as we started having this conversation, realized this conversation was happening really quickly with us, and we were already kind of really clear as a whole group what we thought. So now we're kind of changing course a little bit, and what we're thinking is we'd like to have some conversation with y'all today about how do we make sure that things that we're having conversations about in here are resonating back to us from what our community thinks as well. We don't want to be operating in this echo chamber of us having had a lot of conversation over a long period of time and really having great data that's helped us understand probably what are some good choices without making sure that those choices are really reflective of what our community wants and what they also feel, and that we've brought them along with us. So we're hitting pause, adding a meeting, so that we can have that conversation with y'all together as a group, so that then we can do that next piece of work going forward, which is making sure that all the things that y'all have done over the last 2 years are incorporated into our whole community, because our whole school community needs to be a part of this conversation. So we want to thank y'all for adding a meeting in and for being here tonight and for being a part of this. And I'm going to hand it over so that we can do some quick review and move forward.
Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. Real quickly, I always like this big picture slide. This group doesn't need to solve the problem or make a decision today, just a refresher. Overall agenda, what we're going to be talking about is what we want for next steps, how we gather feedback from the community. We can go into some of that background and data if we need it. And really tonight's about committee suggestions, how we best solicit feedback from the community without making their eyes roll back and overwhelm them. Just group norms real quick. This committee is an advisory committee to the board. It has the important task of developing long-range facility recommendations to meet the needs of this fast-growth school district. School facilities are planned to be built with the expectation that they last 50 to 75 years, and they reflect the values of the community they serve. So tonight, I really want to just start off with group discussion. So again, we've come a very long way and have been very engaged and familiar with the data and possible paths forward. We need to collect feedback from the larger community. How do we get to the community to the same point of understanding that this group is at? Is a survey at this point premature? And I'll just tell you, I have one prepared after we do our first exercise here. But if you tell me that it's premature, maybe we don't go through it. So we have the ability to go through one, but if we don't need it, we can use the time for something else. Another idea, do we start with a very general survey to just gauge current understanding and perception, and then follow up with a second survey that is more specific? Do we have some town halls? Do we do something like thought exchange? So let's take about 15 or 20 minutes in our groups and just kind of brainstorm with these ideas and think about where we think the community is. Do we think that they're ready to handle a survey, or do we need to kind of prime the pump, give them some information in some kind of format before we do that? And if you've got any questions, feel free to raise your hand. I'll be jumping around and I can answer any questions you have. So remember, first test, which way's up on the flip chart? And then whoever has the neatest handwriting is the scribe. All right, folks, we're moving out.
Okay, so we talked about a few different things. One of the things that I said that I've personally done since last meeting is every time I'm in a large group setting, I say, "Hi, my name's Sarah. I'm on the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee. Let's talk about what's happening in our community." And I give a little blurb of what's happening and what's coming. I think that's kind of important for our committee to do as we're out in the community, is to let people know these are the things that are coming. This is kind of what the committee is thinking. So they don't open their email one morning, they're like, "Oh dear Lord." Just kind of start putting that out there, getting that discussion going. So and so that Mark had mentioned that in 2006, a secondary school study group recommended that middle schools never exceed 900 students and high schools not to exceed 2,500 students. This was a study done specifically for Dripping Springs. So it's something that we kind of talked about there, and that kind of looks, he's a numbers person, he said that looks like 3 high schools, 6 middle schools, 12 elementaries. Obviously that's like super, super long range. As far as the survey, we really want to know what this survey looks like. We all had a lot of survey fatigue with COVID, and we don't want to do that to people again. So let's see what this looks like and see if there's ways to combine maybe the perception survey and the regular survey. I think the thought exchange, we talked about that, about doing that before town halls. Town halls definitely being a part of this. Our community has been really divided in my entire existence of living here, which is 2 years. And the school board meetings have been screaming matches. It's kind of terrible. And I don't want to see that happen at one of these town hall meetings. So I think really doing that thought exchange in advance allows us to steer a town hall in a way that's productive and doesn't end in a lot of people just screaming at each other. What's the mom saying? Oh, and Mallory was talking about Lake Travis. They were passing their bond recently, and they put out a lot of, on social media, on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, they put out a lot of like 30-second video snippets to the community that said, hey, did you know this about the bond? And they would give a fact to keep the community informed and on target and kind of end some of the speculation and rumors. You can target those as things come up along the way.
Thank you. All right, who's the appointee? Oh, there we go, Garrett.
Not under speaker. So we started with a little bit of uncertainty as to where we are in this process. So many in this room, we've been meeting for 2 years. We just kicked back up, 3 months, 4 months ago. And the way I've always viewed, and I shouldn't say this is also our team, always viewed this as a really nice subset of our community. We have teachers, administrators, parents, even community members that don't have children, and we're all representative, ideally, of our community. And that's what we're here to do. And so, over the past 2 years and everything, we've gone through so much work of reviewing PowerPoints and hearing speakers and reviewing data and demographic studies. And the idea is that we take all of that and spend hours and hours and hours of getting a recommendation in place. And we've done that. And that's not to discredit getting feedback from the community. Like it's certainly very, very important, but we're the community and we're trying to have a diverse group or a diverse set of ideas. So where we kind of took it was, instead of giving out this blurb as if we're starting from scratch and we want input on every possible scenario and getting 10,000 opinions, which we'll get, more so saying, hey look, here is everything we've done. Here is every meeting we've had in video form. You can watch every meeting. Here's every PowerPoint we've reviewed. Here's every demographic study that we reviewed. Here it is all in one place. We as a committee, a diverse group of people representing our community, came to some recommendations. And our recommendations are second high school. Yes or no? That's the survey. Middle schools. We're recommending 1,200 for the middle schools. Yes? No. The other one was potentially Sycamore. And do we expand Sycamore? Don't we expand Sycamore to get to 1,200? That's kind of been our thought as a group, and if I'm missing anything, please let me know. But that's kind of where we are. And of course, we have down here, look, a thought exchange is great. Let's solicit opinions. If there's something that we all missed, great, we'll get that info. Maybe even town halls, although I personally am a little leery of what that could look like. But anyway, is there anything else I missed, group? Oh yeah, one of the other things we talked about was trying to reach those that don't have children in schools, and the idea that some of those might be retirees and may not want their taxes to go up, but one of the things that was brought up at our table was hopefully a lot of those folks have their property taxes locked in and they're not going up no matter what the bond comes up at. So to me, I'm kind of like, those should all be yeses. Get your property values up and don't pay a dime more in taxes. So maybe they should all come out and vote. Plug for anyone watching this. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
First of all, I'm retired, and that statement is incorrect. Because it doesn't impact you to 65, and then there's certain taxes that they're never held frozen. So that's a big misnomer. And by the way, if you haven't been home yet, your tax bill arrived in your mailbox today. So that's something to look forward to when you get home. Our group talked about the importance of informing before a survey goes out. We need to educate our parents and the community. I'm one of those people that have no children in schools, but I'm also one of those people that sit on 290 on Sunday afternoon with no school in session for 20 minutes to get from Roger Hanks Park to Route 12. So to me, that is a perfect analogy to show and help people understand that our roads cannot accommodate cars. So what do you think is happening within our school buildings? And that right there is a perfect segue to help to educate a lot of people on the need. We need to share snapshot data. One of the things our district did when we were growing, and we had a lot of people being very negative about growing, is that as a principal, I had to designate any classroom within my classroom map of how many kids were 22 or more in that area. And when you get a map, a visual showing a campus map of much of the area, your book rooms, your stages, all of these areas that shouldn't be having instructional purposes are having to be utilized for instructional purposes, it speaks loudly. We talked about that. The road can't handle how imagined our schools are, and then the campus map. So we just feel like a survey right now. We need more information, and transparency is so important, especially nowadays. I just think that we have a lot of mistrust throughout, not with just because it's the school district. We just have mistrust throughout our area right now.
All right, everybody get ready for the feedback. Good evening. We thought a random survey sample would be stronger than just the district contact information that we have right now, to get those people that were talked earlier about that don't have kids in the district yet or don't have kids in the district period. Do we need to pay a professional pollster to create a survey that is a little more succinct or gets the information that we really want from the constituents, or gives them the information in order for them to answer the questions that we want them to know the answers of? Global community communication, not just current district families, we just talked about that. Short summary videos, kind of like what Lake Travis must have done. Offer links to info for a deeper dive, because we do have all of the meetings from however long ago this started, as an option for those that need that more minutia. Video of actual committee members offering information that was put together by us, and so that there's that transparency is there, that we're not trying to
force our opinions necessarily on people, but let them know that we have done the legwork and this is our recommendation. A town hall, we thought might be okay if it was called something else, because that just has a political connotation these days. Led by a committee member and maybe an administrator in different neighborhoods. I don't know if we have buildings or areas that are big enough to hold something of that nature in the different areas. See if we could use local media more efficiently, the local paper, radio, things of that. And that was me, no thought exchange.
Thank you. That was good on the feedback. Okay. We're not sure.
Can I just read the poster?
You can read it.
Surveys, yes, now. Digital format, town hall, maybe during the bond or bond steering committee. Thought exchange, no thank you.
That was very succinct.
We, kind of like other people have said, we think that we do have a lot of information. Other people have worked for a long time, I'm newer, but so we'd like to get that information. If we do a survey, we'd like to get that information first to people, so before they're giving us their opinions, they have the information that's needed. If we do a town hall, I think having a virtual option would be good, that people could watch it even if they're not able to be here in person. Creative marketing to grab the community's attention, that now is the time to get their opinion. I think people, what we talked about was people do a lot of emails and they communicate with individual people, but that information is not necessarily coming back to us right here. So something like a town hall, the survey, if people understand that that's their opportunity to communicate with this group.
I think if this group is evident of what our community is, then I have hope that town halls will be a little more peaceful. Our group, again, is very similar to everybody else, that we need to do a really good survey, but we absolutely need to not relive options that have been determined, not feasible. With that said, it needs to be clear. I think, personally for me, and I think several people in our group, the high school is like the biggest issue, not to belittle the middle schools and things of that nature, but we need to make sure that we are all on the same page as far as the size of the middle school, the size of the high school, the information that we're going to put out there needs to be crisp, clear, and not very open to interpretation. So with that said, going to town hall in person, absolutely having a peaceful exchange and answering questions, but I think as far as this committee is concerned, it might behoove us to develop a very clean idea of where we're coming from, whether we're going out to the community as individuals and speaking to our neighbors. These will all be the same message. Miss anything? No? Oh, no thought exchange.
I think that was every group, right? Raise your hand if I didn't get you. Okay, who wants to see the survey that I started with so you can make fun of me? Okay. Okay. So if you can grab that. So I'm going to turn this off as soon as this meeting's over. So don't let this rip on Facebook. This is a draft survey for internal use. Okay, everybody that wants it, got it? Okay. Hold on. Is that better? So I made it pretty succinct, but if you recall from 2020, when we started, I think we had a draft survey and I had some 2-minute video snippets that we recorded for the high school scenarios for that one. And I included those on the end of this just for reference. So I think I even put a text box that says everything after this point is for reference. But you can get a sense of it. I will go through it. I'll just put it up on the screen. Is everybody good with the code now? Okay. Oh, I can fix that. That's the least of our problems. Okay, so this is just the intro. The Long Range Facilities Planning Committee has met several times over the past 3 months. I could expand that to 2 years to discuss options for future of our facilities, and the time has come to seek community input. Please share your feedback on the survey to help the committee develop a recommendation to the board. Demographic questions, again, we can fix this. I'm not going to go through all those. So I start with middle schools, and I just listed bullet point background information to just keep this as succinct as and objective as possible. So Sycamore Springs Middle School, SSMS, has a capacity of 850. The enrollment is currently 921, is projected to grow to more than 1,200, which is that 120% mark by 26-27. Middle school is currently using 1 temporary building and 4 classrooms from the elementary school. The elementary school enrollment is projected to need those classrooms next year. The estimated cost for a permanent addition to increase capacity to 1,200 is approximately $15 million. The cost for a new middle school at 850 is approximately $57 million. The cost of a middle school at 1,200 is approximately $67 million. The cost to install temporary classroom buildings ranges from $50,000 to $100,000. I need to update that. It's $100,000 to $150,000. Depending on the size of the temporary buildings and the placement conditions, the district will need to house 5,000 elementary or 5,000 middle school students, and this will require 7 total middle schools at 850 or 5 at 1,200. And so that's just succinct background information without showing the entire report at every single presentation we've ever done. What do you think should be done at Sycamore Springs Middle School? Construct a permanent addition on the facility to increase the capacity to 1,200 to accommodate future and projected growth. This would require the use of additional temporary buildings for 22-23 and possibly 23-24. Leave the facility at its current capacity of 850 and expedite construction of a 3rd middle school. This would require the use of additional temporary buildings until 25-26. Other, please specify. What do you think the ideal size for additional middle schools should be? And I built a slider. So it goes from 850 to 1,000 to 1,200 in increments of 50. And then I have, if you think the ideal middle school size is outside of the 850 to 1,200 range, please specify. And then high schools, I'm not going to go through these, but it's very similar information that we showed, just like I showed for the middle schools. And then please indicate your level of support for the following high school concepts. Construct a 2nd comprehensive high school. Continue to add on to the existing high school. Construct a 9th grade center near the current high school. Do not support, neutral, support, or I need more information to form an opinion. And then this is just kind of that final, please share any additional thoughts you have related to the process that you'd like the committee to consider as it develops recommendations. No. Would you like me to put a file upload? Okay, so too much, not enough? Yes.
I'm just gonna say that, A, I don't think people would agree on that.
Okay.
And B, I think that
Hold
it
on.
was confusing enough being here and part. I'm just gonna say, I think it was confusing enough being here and part of the discussion and having the process to actually talk through it, that somebody who's reading that on their phone as they sit in 290 for 2 hours is not going to, they're just gonna pick whatever they think. They're not gonna pick whatever is true. Or what, if they could find out is true, or what they could come to believe if they had more information in a way that was easier to digest.
Okay.
That's
Too many words.
words and more pictures.
So it is a quarter of the size that it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first thing I had is on the high school. I thought that the option number 2 was decided last week to not be feasible. So why put it in there? Expanding this existing school.
Sure, I mean, we
Right.
can take it off. I just
Well, I think it just kind of speaks to, putting information out there that's not going to be a legitimate option.
Okay.
So pulling that back, I agree, too many words, but I also think that people need to be accountable. If you're talking about your kids, you don't pay attention to it, don't whine about it.
One other suggestion might be to actually have a campus map up there, so you can see visually where all the schools are, and maybe put the facts pointing leaders off of the map, so it's not just a whole bunch of text.
That's good.
But I would say just to advertise on the, expanding this high school, it's kind of misleading, where it says, depending on land acquisition around the current site.
Yeah.
People reading that are like, okay, we just acquire land, well, no, that requires people to actually want to sell.
Okay.
You know what I mean, it's not just that let's acquire some land.
Okay.
It's more of a, maybe not.
Got it. I'll move in this direction next.
Yeah, I can't find the exact verbiage, but I thought when it was talking about the second high school, I thought there was something in it about having the same facilities as the current. I don't know. I mean, are we really going to set the expectation that we're going to build a varsity football stadium and pay the money for that? Or is that going to be an either or? Because if you put it in there, people say yes, and then it comes to when the bond's formed and they decide we don't have the money to do it, then you're going to have people, well, we were told that if we wanted the second high school, we could have a varsity stadium. You will have that conversation.
So do you think that we should add that as a separate question, or?
I think the expectation should be that we're going to be like a lot of other districts and have one varsity stadium. There are districts that have 2 and 3 and 4 high schools that use one stadium, and they alternate. So that's my concern. If you put it in there and then it doesn't happen, then you're going to have people saying,
That's a good option.
why did you say that to begin with? It's a bait and switch.
Okay.
I think the demographic information is important, but can we put it at the end of the survey? Because half of the survey is demographic information, and I'm worried that people are going to get exhausted with just filling out where they live and what school they're affiliated with and where their children go to school, that they're going to give up before they get to the important part.
Okay.
So switch. I also don't know if SurveyMonkey's the best thing, if we want to use some sort of platform that prevents people from filling out the surveys 5 times on the 5 different devices that they have in their house. If we really want to get a true sampling of the way people, voters, let's say voters matter, right? Because they're the ones who are the property owners and
well, not all the voters are property owners, but you know what I mean. So that, you know, we don't have somebody hedging their bets. Yeah.
Okay, anybody, I saw a hand over here.
Okay, I have a lot of questions. With the freshman center option, do we currently own the land to make that possible? Or do we have to acquire land?
Not here. The only site that we have that's big enough is the Darden Hill site, and that wouldn't be fun for traffic.
Okay, if we don't own the land to do it, then I don't think we should put that on the survey. And because you're offering, like she had said, you're offering something to the community that very well may not be possible. So I don't think we want to put anything up for sale that we can't actually fulfill. And then she was talking to somebody over at football stadiums. If we go to 3 high schools, wouldn't we need a second stadium? You don't need one. I don't speak football. I will fully admit I do not speak football. I'm trying. I went to 2 games this year. But I don't really know how that works, so.
Okay. Any other questions or observations? I'll get to you next.
If we're not talking about a 9th grade center and we're not talking about expanding the high school, then why are we giving them a survey? We're only giving them one choice. And then that's a different conversation. That's just having enough communication that people understand why we have to do it the way that we're going to do it. But if there's only one choice, then, that's fine.
Or maybe, you don't really want to give them options that aren't feasible, but you could, since the community wants to give feedback, I don't know, or people, there's a good place to voice it now versus later. You could put something like, if we keep it at one high school, we may or may not be able to acquire the land. It may not actually be a feasible option, and here's why. Or same with the 9th grade campus, like we could do a 9th grade center and keep one high school, but it's going to be over at the Darden Hill location. It doesn't really work bus-wise. We've looked into all of it, and it's not really feasible, but here's the facts behind it. And give their opinion versus doing a survey for just basically we need 2 high schools.
I have a few thoughts. I made some notes. First, I think it's important to recognize that surveys it's basically noise to do a survey. It's not a random sample. Trying to make it actionable, it simply isn't. I think it's good that you presented a lot of information. I don't think this format is a way that people are going to be able to ingest it. So the demographic stuff, I get what they're there for. They're screening questions, which is something in polling that occurs frequently, but we aren't screening the results. So if it's a breakdown on the end for your crosstabs or whatever, I would add it to the end. Insofar as the issues, I feel like you're trying to accomplish too much with the survey. I think you need to get more specific as to what it is specifically that you're wanting to know. And so for that, if like some of these are some themes, is cost important, is classroom size important? It helps to ask those questions outright. Granularity is always positive. If you're going to go to the effort in cost and hassle of conducting a survey, it makes sense to do that and ask them that way. My phone just closed. So like when you're asking those questions, you want to ask specifically what you're looking for, and then combine them when you're trying to force a choice. So if you want to see is cost important, is classroom size important, is whatever those importance are, is one high school, is sports, athletics results of the high school important. So all these different things, it helps to ask it and then present, because you're educating as you're asking all those questions, right? If you present in a way that's not trying to force an agenda, but just present information, and you're also getting their feedback each step of the way, then eventually you present them with their options. So it's a walk, not run, if that makes sense. But the problem with something like this, and again, it goes to whether the difference between a professional survey and others is, one, you're not randomly selecting so you're not sure that you're actually getting information from people that are representative of the broader community. But 2, you're going to see a lot of survey fatigue with people that complete a few questions and don't drop off. So that's my concern is when I look at this survey, this should be, I don't know, a 30 to 50 question survey to get all the information you want, and with that, people sometimes aren't going to complete it. For the 9th grade center, I think that's important to ask, especially given basically I think it costs like a third of what it costs to build a new high school. I think that that's an important, not to assume that it's not going to work. I think the one high school should be presented, but with the information of what that would mean, which I think former Superintendent Gearing told us 2 years ago now that this current high school would have to be turned into something else. I think that that's important information for the community to have. And I think the district has the admin site currently that potentially might be able to fit a 9th grade center. And we also have, I think we were told around 4 or 5 million left in land acquisition funds from the last bond as well. But I think that's most of my notes on that, but.
Oh, thank you.
And as far as the 9th grades, I've been on this committee since it seems like forever, when Dr. Gearing was here. And I admire you. You're out talking within the community. I find I don't talk within the community because I don't know what to say. I feel like we've come to these meetings and we've shared a lot of ideas. We've put things on paper, but I'm not sure as to what the end goal is and what we as a committee, I don't think we've reached consensus as to what we're supposed to be communicating. And one of my things, if we are coming up for a 9th grade center as a parent, I'm not any longer, but one of my questions would be, if you have a 9th grader and you're sending your 9th grader out to Darden Hill, and here's this campus, is your child not taking any advanced placement classes? Because there's no way you're going to get your 9th grader to this campus to take some of those. So what's the plan for kiddos that are high achieving, that are taking advanced classes? They're going to graduate in less than 4 years. What if they're in the band and they want to be in the marching band? You can't go be a freshman at that campus and also be in the marching band. You can't be a golfer and be on the varsity golf team when you're on that 9th grade campus. So to me, there's a lot of questions about that we would have to be very clear and communicate that within the community. And also, even on that survey, yes, I'm a parent, but I'm not a parent of a student, but I'm a taxpayer. And I think that would reach a lot of people and be because I am shocked how many people I have encountered that I can vote in the school board election. I don't have any kids in school. Well, you're a taxpayer. Yes, you can. And there's a lot of people that are very intelligent people that have no clue that they can be involved in their school district.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just generally, having a plan, I think all these options to finalize what this will practically look like. We pick a high school, the 9th grade center now, what does that mean? We have to build a new high school. We build a new high school now, we add 9th grade centers later, we build a third high school. I think all those.
So just something that shows what the long-term impacts are of a decision.
In the survey, I mean, that's the type of information the community needs to know, because again, it goes back to broken promises. We're told one thing, something else happens, it may be changing circumstance, but when it happens over and over again, it's really important to see the line.
Okay.
And so I think that's important. And then a coherent plan, because we paid an extra $50 million in the last bond for investment towards this plan that now we're putting on the work for the path to.
Yeah.
Also, can we make sure that everyone has the mic on?
Sure.
People that are watching at home, they've actually told me that they can't hear when people have talk.
I was just saying, I think it's important that any plan that is presented to community is with these options, that kind of the consequences of those options are explained too. So if you build a 9th grade center, obviously you're gonna have to build a new high school eventually regardless. What does that timeline look like versus building a new high school now, which is kind of some of the conversation we were having at the last meeting. And then the community should be aware of kind of those results and timelines and cost and a lot of this too, there's concerns about capacity. We're building too much too early with the 9th grade center versus a high school, and existing taxpayers footing the bill for future growth, and kind of all of those type of concerns. And I think I also talked about, I don't remember, but it was largely around the plan and making sure that the community's aware of that. So.
Time for feedback.
All this talk about high school is great, but I want to talk about middle school. So the question about the ideal size of a middle school, and think about future planning, it makes a difference as to what that site looks like. Is it a middle school with its own site, Or, you know, like at Sycamore, you have a middle school and an elementary school under the same roof sharing facilities, right? So, and then over at DSMS, you have a middle school, and then next door you have an elementary school that share the same traffic flow, but maybe not the facilities themselves. So I think the configuration makes a difference on the size, and we've already kind of set ourselves up moving forward to probably having different configurations, and we won't ever probably have all the same configuration at all the sites around the district as we build out. So I think we need to be careful about asking what the ideal size is if the configurations are going to be different at each of the sites.
So just to kind of say, as I've been talking to the community, the things that I say when I talk to community members and groups is I say, hey, I'm on this committee, we're talking about splitting to 2 high schools, what do you think? And, or I say, the second question I say is we're talking about middle schools, 850 or 1,200 students, what do you think? Like I'm asking really open-ended questions right now from the community, and I will say 850 middle school is what I'm nearly unanimous hearing when I'm asking out in the community. And I'm asking super open-ended, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Martin, I love you dearly. It took me 2 months to convince myself to fill out the survey to be a volunteer at Rooster tomorrow morning, and that was like 6 questions. I will not do a 50-question survey.
In reference to the middle school size, at least at Dripping Springs Middle School, I was involved in the 18 bond process, and I can tell you that the majority, if not all, of the members of that bond steering committee were under the impression that Dripping Springs Middle School was not going to be 1,200 anymore. I think originally in some of the designs for the Walnut Dripping Springs combination, they were going to share the A wing of Dripping Springs Middle School. Dripping Springs Middle School was not going to be a 1,200 student campus. So I think that also needs to come into play in some of these discussions is the goal, or at least the thought process in that 18 bond is that both middle schools were going to be around 850 students, 900 students, and middle school number 3 was already going to be being built right beside high school number 2. So I think that also needs to be taken into consideration, the historical process of this, and I mean, I've been involved in this in some form or fashion since 2013, and I was not shocked, and I understand why it happened, but I can tell you when that bond was presented to the board, the capacity of Dripping Springs Middle School was going to be 850, 900 kids. It was not going to be 1,200 kids.
Okay. Anybody else? That's it? Okay. So I believe we have a tentative meeting scheduled. What was our next date? Next Thursday. So I think what we'll do is we'll start to put together what that education piece looks like, and that's what we'll be discussing next time. And then we'll try to make the decision on what we want to do as far as, do we want to have like that preliminary recommendation like Garrett said, or do we want to give it some more time? Do you want to add anything? Nope. Sure.
People who were here, who weren't here last time, we have people who were here last time, who aren't here this time.
Sure.
I think that there were some meetings where we had a little mini wrap-up at the beginning of the meeting of what was discussed and decided at the previous meeting, and that might be helpful. I know it would be helpful for me, just so that we don't say the people who weren't here at the last meeting and vice versa are in the loop.
Okay.
If that makes sense. It's just a little reminder.
The whole idea about the 9th grade center and not rehashing that over and
Sure.
over.
So let me see if I can capture this. At our last meeting, we had that discussion about the high school, and we did a gallery walkover that we had our notes, and for the most part, there was a lot of consensus around just the idea of the second high school. I just put it on the survey just to show that we could have it as an option, but if you don't think we need to have it on there, we don't have to have it on there. Yes? Come.
I
I was gonna say that in regards to the middle school capacity, if I'm remembering correctly, after the 18 bond passed, there were some LRFP meetings and some other meetings and the zoning meetings, and even Mary Jane Petrick admitted that the capacity for new schools might have to be thought again. And it was because of the new PASA reports, and the quicker uptick in growth. And so I don't know that we need to hold ourselves to the 18 bond because things have changed. And when you have, even the trustees are admitting that we need to look at, other options, especially with the zoning kind of frustration and chaos that happened this last time. So I think even the board is open to looking at higher capacity schools.
Well, also, that chart that research was done in 2016, 2006.
That's 15-year-old data. I mean, you don't even use 10 years data or more you don't even use currently when you're doing research. So it's time to update and look, and our kids are different. They learn differently, and buildings need to reflect today's learners. And I know that 850 is a very small campus. It's lovely, but it's a very small campus. And this community is not small any longer.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if anybody wasn't here last time, I'm happy to kind of go through those data slides, real quick if you missed those last time, but if you don't want to hang out for that, we can adjourn unless anybody's got anything else. Okay, raise your hand if you want me to go through what we talked about last time with those updated data slides. I'm still gonna do it, but I'm not gonna, yeah. Okay, no worries. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next week.